Welcome to the Focolare Word of Life podcast for February 2024. My name is Nick Cianfrani and I'll be your host. In today's episode, we'll be listening to three beautiful experiences that relate to this month's Word of Life, which says, "Let all that you do be done in love." Taken from the first letter of St. Paul to the Corinthians, chapter 16, verse 14. In our first experience, Susan Staffier from San Antonio, Texas, tells us about the task of managing her mother's will and a challenging time with her brother. The second experience is by John Mundell from Indiana, who shares how his small act of love in the office had a big impact among his employees. The last experience comes to us from Toronto, Canada. Dick, who is 98 years old, and his wife Shirley Tetreau tell us about the mutual love between them and the community. Before we begin with the experiences, I'd like to introduce Tom Rowley, who will share a short reflection on this month's Word of Life. Welcome, Tom. It's great having you with us today.
It's great to be here, Nick.
We're eager to have you set the tone for this podcast with a reflection that you've prepared.
Our faith informs us that God is love. Although it may be difficult to fully understand the depth of that love, we can be sure that every act of love we do for the neighbor that comes before us in any given moment is rooted in the love that God has for you. Every act of love, no matter how big or how small, is never lost, but serves as a building block in a wonderful and mysterious way to build the kingdom here on earth.
Thank you, Tom, for your inspiring reflection. Welcome, Susan. It is a great joy to have you in our podcast today.
Thank you, Nick. It's a joy to be here.
Susan, before you share your lovely experience, could you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I live in San Antonio, Texas with my husband, Ralph. We have 2 children and 8 grandchildren. We have lived in San Antonio for 50 years, but we are originally born and raised in New England, just north of Boston in a small city. And I'm a librarian, retired.
Wonderful. Look at that. I didn't know that about you. Discovered something new. So go ahead, Susan. The microphone is yours.
Thank you, Nick. When my mother passed away, I was made executor of her will, and I have 10 brothers and sisters. Not everyone agreed that I should have this responsibility, and this created a lot of tension, especially with one of my younger brothers. It was obvious to us that he was angry. I lived 2,000 miles from our home city, and before we left to go back to Texas, I wanted to see my brother and hopefully patch up whatever divisions he was feeling. It occurred to me that I may never see him again, and I couldn't leave knowing he was angry. The day before Ralph and I were due to fly back to Texas, we went to Mass. My brother's business is in the same city, so Ralph and I decided to drop by his office. As we were pulling into the parking lot, my brother was getting out of his car and he saw us. He just looked at me and scowled. He opened the door to his office. After entering, he slammed the door closed. I knew I had to go in. I had no idea why he was so angry. I was thinking I hadn't done anything wrong, but that didn't matter. Ralph and I agreed that no matter what my brother said or did, all we wanted to do was to love him. We decided to make ourselves one with him, to be the first to love, to greet him without an agenda. So we said a prayer and asked for the patience and grace to love no matter what. We walked to the door and without knocking, we just went in. My brother's business is really interesting. He's in surveillance, and the room was filled with screens. He handles security for many of the businesses in the small city, and he works closely with the police department. After we greeted him with a smile, Ralph immediately commented on all the equipment. We both began to ask questions and said how amazing it all was. Soon he was answering our questions. little by little, he began to smile and became his animated self as he told us about the work that he obviously loved. One could feel the atmosphere change, feel him change. And like a miracle, the love of Christ healed. To me, this was a miracle. After about 30 minutes of talking about his business, my brother hugged us and we left. On the way back to where we were staying, Ralph and I commented to each other how we felt a great joy, that peace and joy that only the love of God can bring. And we were certain that my brother felt it too.
Thank you, Susan. That really shows how making ourselves one with others melts that ice. Thank you for sharing that, Susan. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome, Nick.
Welcome, John. We're delighted you could join us today.
It's great to be here, Nick.
John, can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself before you share your experience?
My name is John Mundell. I'm a person who lives in the Midwest part of the United States, and I've been trying to live this spiritual lifestyle for the last 40-some years, my wife and I, Julie. And so, as far as a business, my business is an environmental consulting company, and it's been part of this initiative from the Focolare called the Economy of Communion that seeks to support the equitable distribution of resources to those in need from around the world, and to really try to live this style of life wherever we are, especially in our business. So it's been a tremendous adventure, and we continue to learn new things every day.
Absolutely. And it's a gift to be able to have this economy of communion, which has helped, and it continues to help so many people. We're happy to listen to your experience.
Fantastic, Nick. I'll share an experience I had at work, because this kind of attitude surrounds us 24 hours a day. So if we find opportunities at work, we can try to love those people at work. And in this particular instance, in an office type of setting, we had a kitchen that was kind of messy, getting messier by the day. And it was, you know how that happens, where people start to leave their dishes without cleaning them. I realized that it was really starting to become a problem for people, And anyway, one day, all the employees went out to lunch. They didn't want to eat in the kitchen because there were no clean dishes. It was a mess. And I thought, what should I do in this case? Maybe I could offer to do my act of love here. And so even though I was the supposedly boss and president of the company, I thought, I'm going to go into the kitchen and I'm going to clean it up. So I began doing the dishes, taking out the trash. And by the end of that lunchtime, I hadn't eaten lunch, but I had cleaned the kitchen up and straightened things up and went back to my desk and thought, that's a good way of loving everyone. Well, when everyone came back from lunch, it was kind of like a little bit of a shock. They walked into the kitchen and they said, wow, who did this, And it became apparent that it was me, that I had stopped and I had, taken care of the mess in the kitchen. And so what happened was it would kind of started spreading that attitude about taking care of the spaces that everyone had. And so, someone was cleaning up their desk, someone took care of the copier area, which there was a lot of extra, pieces of paper lying around. And it kind of started spreading this feeling of calmness in the office, and really changed the attitude a little bit in the office. And the next day, someone brought in some cookies, and I really thought that, this little act of love, this little experience has a way of making room for what I would call kind of like a sacred part of the environment in an office, where you begin to pay attention to relationships and not so much be distracted by the physical settings. The physical area of your office becomes an encouragement for these good relationships.
It's so true. Sometimes, to start a fire, all you need is a little spark. You were the spark in that moment. Just to take that initiative, to be the first to love, as we all know, is really the secret.
Well, thank you, Nick. And there are many other opportunities at work that we have to do the same thing, whether it's with the with the FedEx person that brings our packages, or the person who cleans our offices, or whoever is involved interacting with a company. You have lots of these opportunities to love. If it's with your employees, or you may be an employee that you can do an act of love for someone else in your work environment. So again, these little things are the things that really transform and convert us, to be the kind of people we hope we want to be.
Thanks, John, for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us today.
Take care, Nick. Good being here.
Before we dive into our next story, I have a quick but important message for all of you listeners. Each month, we are so delighted to bring you real-life stories of faith in action, but we can't do it alone. This free podcast is supported by our donors. If you've been moved by what you've heard, if you found a glimmer of hope or a spark of joy in our episodes, we urge you to join us in this divine adventure. Consider donating to Focolare Media by visiting our website, focolaremedia.com/donate, and specify that your donation is for the Word of Life podcast. Together, let's continue to inspire thousands of people all over the world so that the Word can be part of everyone's lives. A heartfelt thank you for your support. Welcome, Dick and Shirley. It is a great joy to have you on our podcast today.
It is a great joy for us to be with you, and we thank you for inviting us.
We go back a long ways from the days when you lived in the States and then now in Canada, but I'll let you speak for yourselves. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourselves?
Hi, everyone. I'm Dick Tetreau, and I'm 98 years old.
Shirley Tetreau, Dick's wife, and I am 86 years old. We have been married for 54 amazingly adventurous years. We have been living this spirituality of unity for 50 years.
And we now live in Toronto, Ontario, Canada since 1986. This February word of life is, let all you do be done in love.
When we heard Chiara Lubick say, love without expecting anything in return, that was an examination of conscience for both of us. I had always tried to be a good person, so others would be good to me and like me. Our freely given love to others will return to us in God's time and in His way when we need more love. Over many years, God's grace has been helping Dick and me to love without expecting anything in return. In March 2023, I had a mini stroke and fully recovered in 3 months. Then in June 2023, I had a heart attack, and it took a year to recover. I kept saying to Jesus what Chiara Luce Badano said, if you want this, Jesus, I want this too. I and Dick had much to offer up for others. Others were suffering more. During that time, Dick was my loving and amazing caregiver. We once again experienced the love of the Ontario Focolare community for Dick and me. One of our Focolare friends helped our son Joe to give me rides to and from many doctor visits, specialist visits, and hospital visits. 2 Focolare friends came every Saturday to help Dick with house cleaning and laundry. A young couple who helped us for 2.5 years with grocery shopping during COVID continued grocery shopping for us. Others brought delicious meals. Others made quick visits to see what help Dick might need.
We experienced our love and the love of others mutually growing and deepening and giving everyone mutual support and happiness, knowing that all this mutual love was a gift from God. God is good.
Thank you both for your wonderful experience, Dick and Shirley, and thank you both for being on our podcast today.
We thank you, yes, with all our heart. And we pray for everyone who is listening to have a healthy, happy life.
So thank you for joining us today. I hope you have been inspired by the wonderful stories shared, and I look forward to being with you again next month. To listen to a reflection and commentary on the Word of Life, just go to the previous episode of this podcast. I invite you to join me each month for new episodes. You can also read additional experiences in Living City magazine. Please consider making a donation to Focolare Media so that we can continue producing inspiring podcasts. Visit give.focolare.us. Thank you in advance for your support. Bye for now, and God bless.
The Word of Life is translated into approximately 90 different languages and dialects, reaching millions worldwide through print, radio, TV, and other media. There are special versions for children and teens as well, which you can find at livingcitymagazine.com. This podcast has been brought to you by Focolare Media.